So gang, since you can't come to me, I thought I'd come to you. Mrs. Ostrander recommended that we record some videos for you from time to time so you can see our faces and maintain a little consistency in our instruction with you. This new distance learning model that we're trying out. So, you know what, first I was gonna just sit in front of my laptop in the kitchen, talk to you for a little bit, but then I thought, what the heck, it's a nice day out. I love fishing, I love being outdoors, and the gym's closed, so I need some exercise, that's for sure. So I drove on over to Cayuga Lake, which you can see right here behind me, at Taughannock Falls State Park. And I'm gonna walk up the gorge here in a little bit, but first I'm gonna talk about the lake a little, and maybe, just maybe, catch a fish or two while I'm standing here. If you can kill two birds with one stone, or maybe one landlocked salmon, it could be all that much better. The guy that just left here caught a nice 6-pound landlocked salmon, so we'll see. Hang on. So here's Cayuga Lake. It's the second largest of the Finger Lakes, and it occupies the typical U-shaped valley that the glaciers carved out as they advanced from the north. We're looking northward right now. And as they advanced south, they carved out these pre-existing river valleys, widened them, deepened them. It's about 430 feet deep straight out from that power plant, and it's very picturesque today. Just a little riffle on the water. You can see this is a nice point that sticks out into deep water, so there are a lot of fish coming in, especially on these nice warmer sunny days. The salmon and bass eat a lot of these invasive round gobies that have gotten into the lake. The lake's very clear now because of another invasive species called the zebra mussel. So I'm gonna make a few casts here just because I can, and then we're gonna hike up the gorge and see what we can find that's earth science related. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there is a guy in a boat right there. He is a lucky guy. Maybe I can get my boat out here in a few weeks and get out there too. Okay, the live target goby was not effective today. I made about 50 or 60 casts and nothing, but that's okay. We've got some really cool stuff to look at up in the gorge. Maybe I'll try catching a few more fish here after I get done with the walk. We'll see. Depends on the weather, depends on how nice it is, and depends on how many people are here. Stay tuned. Okay, so I'm gonna start hiking up the gorge trail here in a second, and right behind me here is the lower falls at Taughannock Falls State Park. This waterfall flows over the Tully limestone formation. It's about 15 feet thick. It's a lot harder than the underlying shale, so it's slowly carving its way upstream towards the big falls. In about 12,000 years, it's moved roughly half a mile. So at that rate, it's gonna take a while, isn't it? That whole process of moving upstream is called sapping. And you can see when the water's high as it is now, there's quite a bit of weathering and erosion going on. There's a bit of cloudiness to the water, so we have some suspended sediments being carried out into Cayuga Lake, helping to make Taughannock Falls State Park and the delta at it a little bit bigger. So if you take a look at the stream bed here, you can see that the stream seems to follow the far bank. Well, there's a good reason for that. This point sits on top of what's called the fir tree anticline. So it's like a hump of rock, and it's tilting down into the earth as you go away from us. so the water stays on the far side of the channel. You may also notice all these little puddles in the top of this Tully limestone formation. These are called solution pits. They're formed when the slightly acidic water from rain and from the creek flow over this limestone, which, as we've learned earlier this year, is made of calcite, and calcite dissolves in acid, and you get all these depressions and pits that fill with water and kind of look like little footprints all over the rock formation. You can also see a lot of cracks that go all the way across the stream. These are called joints, and a lot of them are really, really straight, and they formed over 200 million years ago during the formation of Pangea, when Africa collided with North America. And over the course of several million years, the force of that collision cracked all the rocks, even in here in New York State, creating these cracks in the bedrock that are called joints. Here you see an interpretive sign, a kiosk, so to speak, telling you that this area was once a sea, that this was basically a part of what was called the Appalachian and Catskill Deltas, and a lot of the material that settled in here to form the rocks that you see today came from the weathering and erosion of these huge Acadian mountains that were the size of the Himalayas. You can see some of the sea life that might have existed on the bottom of the ocean here at that time. A lot of crinoids, which are sea lilies, ammonites, trilobites, armored fishes, and all kinds of cool stuff. Bryozoans. Under the lake, some of that stuff that was deposited was salt. And you can see a picture here of the salt mines that are literally directly beneath my feet. Probably 2,000 to 3,000 feet down. Another thing you'll notice a lot here at Taughannock Falls State Park is that a lot of the trees growing along the trail clearly are no longer straight. They have this curvature to them, and that's because when they sprouted, they were straight. But the downward movement of sediments on this hillside, it's called a slump, is slowly tipping them over. And as they tip, they try to continue to grow upward through what's called a gravitropism response, and you see these curved tree trunks as a result. Pretty cool. So what we're looking at here is the product of a form of mass wasting. It's called a talus slope. It's all the crumbly, loose, weak shale, Geneseo shale, that came from way up there. And it slowly falls down the side of the hill, especially in the springtime when the ice is melting out of the cracks in the rock, and frost action or frost wedging is loosening all that material and letting it fall back down into the gorge. You do need to be careful this time of year because there are falling rocks, and if you're not kind of vigilant, you could get hit by one. People have in the past, and it hasn't ended well for them. You know, speaking of rock falls and talus, I'm kind of glad I wasn't here whenever this whole hillside let go and deposited this large mass of rock at the floor. That would have definitely taken a person out. Impressive. Here's another great example of a really large rock fall that happened here a couple of years ago. And you can see there's quite a pile of debris that had to be cleaned up by park crews and make sure people aren't hurt. Definitely did not want to be here when all that fell down here. It's also important to bear in mind that all the material that filled this gorge has been weathered and eroded by Taughannock Creek out to Cayuga Lake over the course of the past 12,000 years. That material was deposited at the lake, forming a large delta, and we call that Taughannock Point today, and that's where the state park sits. That's where I was fishing just a little while ago. I was standing on that delta at the mouth of Taughannock Creek. It's also worth noting as I stand here, there are rocks falling constantly. I'm not sure I'll catch one on video, but it's definitely happening every couple of minutes. These large vertical ridges coming off the cliff are called buttresses. They form when rock differentially weathers, breaks off the cliff face along those joints, those cracks in the crust that I mentioned a little while ago. It gives the cliff a unique look. So if you look over my shoulder, you'll see the high falls here, Chenango Falls State Park. A lot of weathering and erosion are going on here, forming this large 400 feet deep amphitheater that you see it is carved out. It's one of the highest waterfalls this side of the Mississippi. It's over 200 feet high in terms of vertical drop from the top of the falls to the bottom. It, just like the lower falls, is slowly weathering its way upstream, sapping its way up towards the town of Trumansburg. All of the rocks you see here were once part of this amphitheater and came from the falls. The plunge pool is over 90 feet deep, and you can see by looking at the spray, it creates quite a bit of wind as the water hits the plunge pool below. Cold, wet, but beautiful. And you can see there are a lot of rocks falling here too. There's quite a bit of spray in the air. It's hard to tell from the video, but it's pretty cool. So there you have it, Taughannock Falls State Park. Cool place. Really nice hike, lots of earth science, lots of biology. So if you're stuck inside during this time of school closure, do yourself a favor, get outside. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got a salmon or two to catch. See ya.